So the topic that I'm going to speak on is not new. I have been saying this for last 2 to 3 years or so, but still, without repetition and without reinforcement, certain messages, very important messages, cannot be conveyed. So I thought of covering this topic once again in this conference before this August gathering. So yes, what I'm going to say is that there are certain theories in Ayurveda which are important, which are applicable, but some of those, they require our attention because of their limitations. So Tridosha theory is the case in point in today's lecture, and I'm going to say and show you how we should and why we should acknowledge the limitations of Tridosha theory. So it was developed to systematize the knowledge on health and disease. That is the reason why Tridosha theory was required. So Panchamabhuta theory, for example, it explains the constituents or constituent parts of anything and everything, living and non-living. It is to draw the distinction between living and non-living beings. There is another concept that is required, that is Atma. But to distinguish between health and disease, again, the Tridosha theory was developed. And this is a very basic thread which brings together or connects together various aspects of Ayurveda, starting from anatomy, starting from physiology, right, pathology, diagnosis, treatment, therapeutics, everything is, even the materia medica, all these are connected through a common thread, and that is called Tridosha theory. Everywhere we use Tridosha theory, right? But we need to understand and acknowledge that there are several limitations when it comes to anatomy and physiology of Ayurveda, in Ayurveda. For example, the role of kidneys in urine formation was not known to Ayurvedic scholars, right? Similarly, the conversion of one dhatu into another, that is, example especially, the formation of shukra from majja. All these are, outdated concepts, and we need to understand that these are the limitations of Ayurvedic textbooks. And that is why, for example, a Pandu or anemia of renal origin cannot be explained by Tridosha theory, right? Similarly, the endocrinal disorders like hyperprolactinemia associated with the pituitary tumor cannot be explained by Tridosha theory, because during those days the endocrine system was not known, right? So that is the reason why I am saying that Tridosha theory, though important, it has got its own limitations, and we need to acknowledge it. So some observations may help us to build a background. So imagine a plant kept in a dark, in a closed, airtight jar. It dies soon, right? So too cold a climate normally does not support life. An animal, when suffocated, it dies. So one cannot survive without water and food. So warm on touch is sign of life. So if someone asks you, or if I ask you, name 3 essentials without which you cannot survive, then possibly these are the 3 things that you are going to name. The air or wind, we need to breathe. Sun, we depend on plants for food, and plants cannot survive without sun. So sun is the ultimate source of all energy on earth. And water, we need water to drink and also to cook food and so on, right? So this is how the Tridosha theory was developed. That is what is known as Loka Purusha Samya, right? The wind or atmosphere or air, right? It is required for breath or movement, right? Sun, light, fire, heat, warmth, energy, nutrition, and so on. Water, hydration, nourishment, coolant. So that is why Soma, Surya, and Anila, they were compared or integrated with the Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So hence it was logical to propose that Vata, just as wind, controlled all activities like movements. Pitta, just as sun and fire, generated heat, imparted color, and brought about digestion. Kapha, just as water, provided nourishment and acted as coolant. So this is a table that I have framed to explain you the problems that Ayurvedic teachers face. This is the problem that we face. For example, Vayu, straightforward biological entities which can represent Vayu are respiratory gases and gases in gastrointestinal tract, right? Pitta, acidic gastric juice or bile and pancreatic juice. Kapha, mucoid secretions in the gut and respiratory tract. This is very direct understanding, very direct correlation. It is not even correlation, it is direct understanding, right? So equivalent entities in the external world the wind or air, fire or sun, water and moon, right? So the gaseous mixture in our atmosphere is called air. It includes every gas that makes up atmosphere. But wind, these terms are important, right? The meaning of these terms has to be understood clearly. Wind is the horizontal motion of air due to the pressure difference between the two places. So that is why wind is Vayu, because it causes movement, right? So possible observational basis. So this is the possible observational basis based on which the different functions were ascribed to Vata, Pitta and Kapha. For example, inhalation and exhalation are nothing but the movement of air in and out of the lungs. Flatus and belching are also experienced frequently. Act of vomiting produces burning sensation because of acidity. The vomiters can be yellow to green, indicating the presence of bile and other juices, right? So this is direct understanding. Mucus in the lacrimal, nasal, respiratory tract is profusely secreted when one is exposed to irritants such as smoke and dust. So stools also contain mucus. Saliva is continuously secreted in the mouth. So all these are very common observations based on which Vata, Pitta, Kapha and their functions were ascribed. So now the attributes. Vata is said to be cold, dry, rough, light, minute, mobile. Pitta, moist, penetrating, hot, light, foul-smelling, sour, flowing, fluid. Kapha, dense, slow, cold, viscous, clear, wet, stable. So how these qualities or properties were identified? It is based on, again, observations of commonsensical nature. Breeze is cooling, wet clothes get dried when exposed to the wind. That is why ruksha or dry. Exposure to wind, windy winters makes one's skin dry and rough, right? Wind is invisible, hence it is minute. Wind is very light, wind moves freely. So all the qualities or properties are explained on the basis of common sense, right? Similarly, Pitta, fire radiates heat, heating helps cook food. Vomitus is a fluid that is acidic, sour, produces burning sensation, is yellow to green and smells foul, so Pitta. Kapha, mucus is viscous, gel-like, slimy and slippery. Mucus is normally clear in appearance. Because of viscous nature, it does not flow freely, is somewhat stable and is dense. See, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, all the features or all the properties are clearly explained through commonsensical basis, right? Now, functions directly explainable through this. Inhalation, exhalation, Vata. Digestion, Pitta. Lubrication, Kapha. Now the actual problem comes. How do you explain motivation, movements, regulation of physiological urges, normal movements of bodily tissues, perception through wind? You cannot explain. Warmth of the body, vision, hunger, thirst, taste, glow, intellect, discretion, valor, normal consistency of bodily tissues. How do you explain this through Pitta? You cannot. Stability, resistance against diseases, joining the different structures. How do you explain this through Kapha? You cannot. So teachers and students, what do? This is where we go wrong. We try to interpret these functions based on the entities that are known through the modern science. That's why we say that, see, Vata should include nervous system, Pitta should include endocrinology, Kapha should include immune system. Why do we make such statements? Because we are unable to explain certain functions ascribed to classical Vata, Pitta and Kapha. And this is the mistake that we have been doing. Because they did not know the endocrine system. They did not know the functioning of nervous system, though they had gross idea. But when we do these interpretations, we make it sound as though Ayurvedic scholars knew everything, which is wrong. Because these Samhitas were written 2000 years ago, obviously certain things that were written are outdated, have become outdated, and we need to acknowledge and identify such things so that our students will be benefited. Ultimately, everything what I am going to tell you and share with you is for the purpose of students and learning. So, theory modification is the rule of scientific progress. For example, let me give you a very simple example. Cutting living human beings using knife is a crime. Agree or not? Agree. But surgeons cut living human beings using knife. So all surgeons are criminals? No. So cutting living human beings using knife with an intention to cause harm is a crime. So this is how when your observations do not match with the theory, you go for theory modification. This is very simple, right? Similarly, quantum physics and Newtonian physics. When people understood that within the atom, the rules of external world, the Newtonian physics do not apply, then the new branch of quantum physics was developed. Similarly, when the geometrical rules like the straight line doesn't meet, right, with each other, two ends of straight line, they do not meet each other. But if you start moving on the equator of the earth, right, on one side, maybe west, ultimately you go to a circle and come back to the same point. So straight line and circle are equal. So to draw the distinction, again, Euclidean geometry and spherical geometry were distinguished. That is how whenever your observations do not match with your theory, the theory modification is required. And that is why I say that several observations that we make today do not match with the theory of Tridosha. Hence, there is a need to modify the Tridosha theory. For example, based on karma, many argue that no, our Pramana Siddhanta or Nyaya Vaisheshika Siddhantas can prove Tridosha theory. Let us examine that also. Based on karma, doshas can be inferred is a common argument. Even Chakrapani makes this argument, saying that doshas can be identified through their karmas. Now let us know, what is inference? Anumana, right? Inference is pratyaksha purvakam anumanam. It has to follow the pratyaksha. For example, the Vahni and Dhuma. We have seen the association of Dhuma and Vahni several times, and then we can infer that by looking at the Dhuma, we can infer the presence of Vahni. Because we have seen the association, we know the causality. But if we do not haven't seen the Vata producing movements or Pitta producing, several functions, we have not seen them. So how can you say that by observing karma you can infer Vata Pitta Kapha? Then arguments come that no, it is Aptopadesha. But Aptopadesha, if you imply in Anumana, that is not what Nyaya Vaisheshika says. Nyaya Vaisheshika always has said that Pratyaksha Purvakam Anumanam, not Aptopadesha Purvakam Anumanam. So, using Aptopadesha to prove Anumana goes against the logic of Ayurveda itself. So, using the Ayurvedic logic itself, we can prove that doshas are, the entities that cannot be proven. So, Ayurveda theories were mostly based on observation-driven theory construction. As I told you, I gave you the examples. Based on commonsensical observations, these theories were constructed. And interventions could have been documented based on experimentation. But again, the data and the methods of experimentation have not been documented in Ayurvedic textbooks. For example, one drug is better than other. Without doing at least some preliminary experiment, this conclusion cannot be documented. So they have documented this because possibly they must have conducted some experiments, though the details are not there. So we need to understand or distinguish between the theories and speculations that have been documented based on observations from those that have been documented based on experimentation. This is the need of the hour. So Tridosha-based interventions could be valid, but many speculations are not. This is what I am trying to say. Many of, including policymakers and many of my colleagues are angry with me since I wrote one article 2 years ago, Confessions of an Ayurveda Professor, right? So that made many of my colleagues and many of my, fraternity, get angry with me. But this is the logic that I am giving. Try to understand this, and I am sure I am right, and I am going to convince you, right? So hence, Tridosha-based interventions could be valid, but not the speculations. For example, we need to distinguish between what is useful and what is not. For instance, samprapti of most of the diseases is based on conjectures and speculations. This is mostly not useful. For example, one vata going out of its original place and going to the place of pitta and then dragging the pitta from its place and causing some symptom. All this is imaginative concept. This is very clear. There is nothing like vata, pitta, kapha. They are not material entities. We should understand and we should tell this to our students. Whereas, in case of treatment, yes, understanding the particular symptom to be vataja symptoms or pittaja symptoms, that is useful. So, Tridosha theory has got some useful components and some outdated components. We need to distinguish between the two. So, this is the study that we recently did. We identified, we sent some 5 case scenarios to more than 150 physicians. They responded to our questionnaire. We asked them to explain the physiological basis, Ayurvedic physiological basis, based on your treatments are framed. So we came to know that there are several conflicts between the physicians themselves. One says that no, it is Vataja disease. another says it is Pittaja disease, another says Kaphaja disease, one says it is, Rakta Mokshana is indicated, another says Rakta Mokshana is contraindicated. All these controversies we have been able to, document, and this paper is under review, maybe published soon. I'm not sure, but yes, so we have been able to draw some very interesting conclusions based on this study. So what we have gathered is physicians use Tridosha theory to classify symptoms. For example, inflammation, Pitta, right? And also they use Tridosha theory to plan interventions, Virechana for Pitta, right? But do not use it to understand pathophysiology. Vata moves from its place to drag Pitta and all that, right? No physician describes these kind of samprapti. And this was known to Ayurvedic scholars. If you go through the evolution of Ayurvedic textbooks, if you open up Bhava Prakasha, no samprapti is there. See, right, directly he says, Pitta Jijvara, Lakshana, Chikitsa. Vata Jijvara, Lakshana, Chikitsa. Because he had recognized that samprapti is useless. That is why, almost all granthas like even Chakradatta, right, Bhaishya no samprapti is mentioned, because they knew that this is conjecture based, this is imaginative and doesn't have clinical applicability, right? Even P.V. Sharma sir, in one of his commentaries, he writes that Bhava Mishra probably had recognized that its applicability is very, very minimal. Even he says the same thing about Panchamahabhuta, right? Most of the, all other medical, sciences have discarded the theory of, 5 basic elements or whatever. But we are still, hanging on to it. This is what he says. These are the comments that he makes, right? So rightly so, because the importance of samprapti was recognized by many scholars in the past, Bhava Prakasha, Bhaishya and so on, right? So this has been the tradition of Ayurveda, but we seem to have forgotten it, right? The recognizing some useless contents and modifying the theory and moving forward has been the tradition of Ayurveda, but we seem to have forgotten it, right? So Tridosha theory can only be useful as heuristic. So what is heuristic? Heuristics is a process by which humans use mental structures to arrive at decisions. Heuristics are simple strategies that humans, animals, organizations, and even machines use to quickly form judgments, make decisions, and find solutions to complex problems. Often, this involves focusing on the most relevant aspects of the problems or situations to formulate the solution. While heuristic processes are used to find answers and solutions that are most likely to work or be correct, they are not always right or the most accurate. So that is how we should view Tridosha theory. It is useful as heuristic. To make quick decisions, it is useful. But to explain pathophysiology and other things, no, it is not useful. So many of our theories need to be demoted from their current position of being considered unquestionable and ultimate truth to being viewed as only heuristics. Ethically, it is problematic to spend hundreds of hours teaching impractical aspects of these theories. This will reduce memorization burden on our students. We can introduce more useful subjects in the curricula in more depth, like molecular biology, genetics, biochemistry, pathology. This will influence the examination pattern of PG entrance test also. When you reduce the importance given to memorization aspects, obviously students will get more interested in our curricula. Reduce the stress among students. So how all this is relevant to the theme of this conference? Yes. So Mahatma Gandhi, when he was here in 1942, he laid down the foundation stone of Ayurvedic College. He has made some very interesting remarks. He says, यहाँ मैं आप लोगों से 2 शब्द कहने आया हूँ, वैद्यों की हमेशा कटु आलोचना करता आया हूँ और आगे भी करता रहूँगा, क्योंकि उनका ज्ञान शास्त्रों तक ही सीमित हो गया है. खोज वे नहीं करते. शास्त्रों में वो भी जो भी कुछ लिखा है वो सब ठीक है या नहीं, इसको जानने की वे कोशिश नहीं करते. बहुत दिनों का पुराना ज्ञान अब तक चला आया है, उसमें उन्होंने परीक्षण द्वारा परिवर्तन नहीं किया. इसका एक उदाहरण मैं आपको दे रहा हूं. मैंने सुना और पढ़ा भी है कि मधु, नींबू का रस और पानी मिलाकर पीने से नुकसान होता है. मैंने इसको आजमाया, मुझे तो इससे कोई नुकसान नहीं हुआ. मैंने अन्य लोगों को भी इसका सेवन कराया, उन लोगों को भी नुकसान के आधार पर फायदा ही हुआ. तब मैंने अपने एक मित्र को, जो एक अच्छे वैद्य हैं, यह बात लिखी. उन्होंने लिखा कि शास्त्र में तो ऐसा ही लिखा है. सो इस उदाहरण को देने का मतलब यह है कि शास्त्रों में जो भी कुछ है वो सत्य है या नहीं, इसको जांचने के लिए प्रयोग करना चाहिए, और जो भी कुछ उसमें अच्छा है ले लेना चाहिए और कूड़ा करकट फेंक देना चाहिए. सो दिस इज व्हाट ही सेड. एंड फाइनली ही सेड दैट इसलिए इस विद्यालय का मैं शिलारोपण अवश्य करता हूं, परंतु इससे ऐसे कार्य होने चाहिए जिससे मुझे संतोष हो, तभी मैं अपना यह काम सफल मानूंगा. सो this is the mandate of BHU. This is the mandate of BHU. That is why I do this. Even, P.S. Warrior in 1922, he wrote in the Usman Committee report, if you read, there is an annexure by P.S. Warrior. He says that Sharirasthana has become obsolete. It has to be replaced. So what I am saying is not new. It has been said 100 years ago. We are lagging 100 years behind. This is what my concern is. And we are in a position to guide the ministries and other policy makers. Instead of asking them some favors, we should be able to guide them, and we are able to guide them. And with these words, I conclude my talk. Yes, I'm not the first one to have said this. There are many references, many scholars who have been saying so. And yes, with that, I conclude my talk. Thank you for the opportunity.